Hi everybody, Matt Lawton here, and this is the Astrological Winds channel, and we are going to look at the month of May and the weather forecast for the month of May, which of course is like our medium range forecast. And so I'm looking just at like what I consider the main events of the month. And so they're a little bit bigger, they last longer, and have an effect that is a little bit more in the background for sure than the stuff that's more on the weekly plate and forecast. So there's actually three things in May that are pretty big energy shifts. And the first one happens every 18 months, and that's the nodal axis, the north and south nodes of the moon. That is, since every planet has nodes, the nodes that are paid attention to in astrology are the moon's nodes. And that is going to be shifting into Gemini for the north node and Sagittarius for the south node. Now, the nodes are always moving retrograde, basically. So they've been in Cancer and Capricorn for the last year and a half. And I've actually talked a lot about that here and there over the different forecasts about how Cancer and Capricorn and how that acted in the last 18 months. And one of the things we need to remember about the nodes is in a general sense, is the north node is what we're moving towards, where we're growing, where we're learning, where we're getting new information and adjusting ourselves, adjusting our path, and that's where we need to go. So it's an unknown, so it can feel a little bit shaky at times for sure, because we're learning, and it also is challenging to our normal way of doing things. Like it wants us to basically evolutionize up a step from the way we've been doing things, and it will want us to lock into what is the positive aspects of the sign that it's going in, the north node, and then the south node alternatively at the same time is the stuff we need to kind of leave behind. It's the stuff that has served its purpose and it served it well. And now we are kind of like almost like an expert in that area. So it's not really helping us to grow anymore. It's like kind of like the same old thing. But yet at the same time, we do at that point have a lot of experience in that sign and how that energy is. But at the same time, we can see how now certain parts of that energy hold us back and are not allowing us to go on a new path. It's like the well-worn path. And just, in Vedic astrology, in Indian astrology, they use the north node and the south node too. They call it Rahu and Keta, and they're considered, tough planets to deal with, or and not exactly planets, but in a Vedic chart, you will see them, and they're very, very important in the Vedic chart. And remember, the Vedic charts do not have Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. So they kind of like have a lot to do with karma and dharma from that perspective. And the north node is your dharmic path, where your soul kind of needs to move to do what is right for it in this lifetime, and the south node is the stuff that kind of is holding you back. But they both are very challenging from that level too. So here we've been for a year and a half, looking once again, South Node in Capricorn, at the negative things of Capricorn, about how we let hierarchical structure and the systems it created help those at the very top, but not so much those at the bottom anymore. So those structures have been under attack really since Pluto went into Capricorn over 10 years ago. But when the South Node went through it the last 18 months, we've really gotten a chance to see how our old structures are holding us back. And that's not just, in a societal way. This is like within ourselves too. So we need to look at it that way too. So like the last 18 months has been saying Cancer is the North Node, which is more of this everyone needing nurturing, like everyone needing their needs met, everyone needing to feel secure in that kind of way. So we've gotten a lot of lessons and downloads in the last 18 months on moving away from that structure and bringing more like emotion to that coolness that Capricorn South Node had, bringing more humanity, which is very much part of Cancer because of being such an emotional sign, and we are such emotional beings. So now we're moving into Gemini and Sagittarius. And it's, to me, very fitting, so much so again, because right now, here we have the world dealing with this quarantine situation, which of course is filtering down to all of our lives, and how that affects us individually too. And so now, like, relationships have become suddenly very Gemini-like, which is like sharing information amongst people who are around you in your local area. So, like, obviously that can be friends, but it's also neighbors and a people that you just see or associate with regularly in your neighborhood. So it could be like business people that that you frequent their location or whatever that may be. So so the Gemini North Node, I think, is going to be like, it's ruled by Mercury, and it's all about like getting a lot of information from all different sources and all different places. And then I think the goal for us in these next 18 months with the Gemini North Node is to sort through what is actually factual and what is not, because there's just a lot of information. And Mercury is a non-emotional planet. So like Gemini has a tendency to be a more non-emotional sign, and that's why at times it can feel like a superficial energy. And unfortunately, the bad side of that can be like you take in a lot of stuff, but you're not getting into anything in depth. So what really needs to be done now is like looking at all this information we're getting every day, sharing it, which is what we're all doing, and then trying to like weed out what is actually factual, what is actually not. But it will be a time, a lot of communications going on, a lot of information being shared, a lot of education going on, and that's in our personal lives and as a collective. And then, like, what are we leaving behind in the South Node in Sagittarius? What is holding us back? The negative parts of Sagittarius that could be holding us back, and that is our old belief systems and values and the way we look at law and medicine and education and travel and religion and values and morals. All those things right now are the things that are holding us back from being able to what's actually discern what is factual and what is not. So what we need to do as conscious beings is try to get beyond our belief systems that are ingrained in us, that we have learned from our culture, from our society, from our education, and try to get outside of that and make sure that old values are not holding us back from determining, with all the information out there right now, what is actually true and the best thing for us to do, both personally and collectively. So we're gonna have 18 months of this. The nodes take about 18 months to go through a sign. So we're gonna have 18 months of this, which to me, once again, when you talk about some of the timelines of quarantining and social distancing and stuff, seems to fit in with a lot of those timelines. So expect a lot of that information coming to you from all different sources. The need to share that on a local level, educate ourselves about what's right and what's not right. And remember, what's right and what's not right changes all the time. So need to actually flow like the air of Gemini with that. And see, remember the thing too with the Jupiter is the ruler of Sagittarius. And Jupiter right now is in very weak condition in Capricorn in fall. So that's what's causing us to fall right now, is our old ideas that we're holding on to, our old values, our old philosophies. That's why we're having a hard time adjusting as a world to this new challenge of the virus, and that's what may be going on in many of our lives personally too, is that the things we value are shifting and we're trying to hold on to them in this Capricornian way. And Jupiter is no way, that's not going to happen. Not when I'm in Capricorn, it's all going to start to crumble. So get the new information, get the new download, sort through. You have a year and a half to sort through what is the right information for you, for us, for all. All right, the second big thing is that 3 more of the planets are going to go retrograde in the middle of the month. And I think within a 4-day period, actually, it's going to be Saturn on the 10th, I think, and Venus on the 12th, and Jupiter on the 14th. So very interesting there. Let's just separate Venus out and talk about Jupiter and Saturn both going retrograde. And they have a retrograde cycle of 4 and 4.5 months, so they'll be retrograde until September, mid to late September. And Saturn, remember, just went into Aquarius not too long ago, so it's actually going to retrograde back into Capricorn. I think in early July it is, actually. So that's our cycle. So now remember, Jupiter and Saturn are the 2 social planets. These are the 2 planets that society and its values and its systems kind of work on collectively. So once again, Jupiter in Capricorn, very weak. Saturn was in Capricorn, but it's going back to Capricorn. It's a little bit in Aquarius right now. And I think Saturn has seen, while it's been in Aquarius, how its system is failing, how the old Capricorn system is failing. So Saturn's like, okay, you're right. We need to make some changes to this system. It is not functioning in an efficient enough manner anymore. So Saturn's got a glimpse of that from going into Aquarius, where it's still very strong, and it's like got some ideas on how it wants that to happen now. So it's gonna maybe take a step back and think about how structures can be changed. Now the danger is, come July, when it goes back into Capricorn, that if things get too intense for us, as individuals, as society even more, with Jupiter and Saturn, we may have a tendency to slip back into what's old and familiar and hope those structures will once again support us. And that may not necessarily be the case. In fact, more likely than not, it's not the case. And I think that's what Jupiter in Capricorn retrograde's really going to show us. It's going to be like, no way, these old structures that surround law and medicine and education and philosophy and religion and morals and value systems and philosophical systems and the way we travel internationally is all up in the air right now. And it's all falling somewhere, and it's going to fall somewhere, and then we're going to have to pick up the pieces and kind of figure out where to go from there. So I think, once again, just like the nodes, it kind of fits in collectively with where society is going right now. We all kind of need to take a step back. And remember, Jupiter and Saturn work great together. They balance each other out well together. So like they're taking this step back together. They're like, whoa, like we've seen what's going on here, and we have definitely a lot of problems in the structure of what's going on. I think it's time to get into the garage and start fixing some of this stuff before it all falls apart. So, not as much. You're not going to feel this stuff as much on a personal level, but you will feel like, okay, yeah, I have to adjust some of my philosophies and values and the way I look at things in order to rebuild structure in my life, the parts of my life that are not showing stability in their structure anymore. So like on a personal level, you can look at it like that. But it's definitely very interesting to see, the two of them, we know since the beginning of the year, moving together in Capricorn mainly, and will conjunct one another early next year at 1 degree Aquarius, so like a new age starting then. And so like very, very interesting timing on that energy and what it means and that. And so the last thing is Venus going retrograde. Okay. So Venus going retrograde is something you're going to feel a lot more in your personal life. It's a lot more like Mercury retrograde or Mars retrograde, where it's, you're going to be like, okay, I see this going on. Okay, so Venus is the planet of relationships mainly, and when it goes retrograde, which is every about 2.5 years, it's a 6-week period. So we're going to have a retrograde period now for 6 weeks once it starts in mid-May. So till about the end of June, you'll have 6 weeks of this backwards type energy working relationships, and Venus will be in Gemini the whole time. So the first thing to say about Venus retrograde is that any relationships that you have that are experiencing instability as you're coming into the Venus retrograde period, it's going to reach an apex during that period. And you may feel like you have to make some kind of decision at that point about how to like redefine that relationship, or how you're going to approach that relationship, or even if you want that relationship anymore. I've definitely seen Venus over the years really work mainly on an acute level like that. That people who are that you're already having issues with, and this is not just your lover, okay, or your significant other, or your husband or wife. It's like, look at all your relationships, you know, and the ones that are troublesome now, as Venus is slowing down, are going to be the ones that are going to be very difficult and tense and stressed out during this time. And you think about Venus in Gemini, not particularly strong there, not particularly weak either. Venus in Gemini is like, has a hard time dealing with a lot of deep emotional stuff. It would like rather pretend to live within itself in its own world and define each of its relationships that way. And usually when things kind of get deep, the trickster side of Gemini can show up and bring the relationship back to a surface or superficial level. So I think what people may do is like they may get a little bit fed up with people who they perceive that are doing that to them, that like they're trying to be like a trickster, or someone who's like just trying to, you know, not get into the deep levels of this. That may be a really frustrating thing. And then another thing will of course be like the information that people are bringing you can be very disturbing to relationships during Venus and Gemini too. So like, just like, you know, there'll probably be like a lot of misunderstood communications, a lot of like information that once again you're getting from people, but it's not necessarily agreeable to you, or hasn't been fully looked into and can be misleading, which can damage relationships too. So, you know, like I said, from what I've seen over the years of Venus retrograde, really, you know, the relationships that are going to be the most intense for you are going to be the ones that are already stressed. I don't see it affecting your regular relationships quite as much. I think people definitely get a little bit more internal, but at the same time, I think it's like, it's not like they're not communicating and stuff. I think they just kind of define relationships from their own perspective a bit more, and, you know, are not like maybe being as realistic about that, therefore. So, but you don't like go out and, you know, see some of the things that like Mercury retrograde would do, like in a general way. It really, to me, seems to affect relationships that you already have been in, and relationships that are feeling stress are going to reach that level of like, oh, you know, this is like a peak moment in this relationship, and it's a turning point, and there's going to be a path that changes now on that relationship, and how that relationship works from now on, or not works. So those are the three main energies of May, and as like I said, you can see they all go beyond May too. The nodal one's an year and a half. The Jupiter and Saturn retrograde are 4 to 4.5 months, and the Venus retrograde is going to be 6 weeks. And then the one other thing, just for fun, speaking of Venus, and I'm a night sky watcher, so been very, very bright this winter and spring up there in the northwest sky mainly. At nightfall, it's that bright. I mean, it's so much brighter than any other thing that, you can't miss it, really. Anyway, get a good look because it's reached its peak and it's going to start sinking down towards the horizon as the month goes on and will disappear from us at the end of the month. So this is your last 30 days for a long time in the evening to get to see the goddess of love. And also, there was a great opportunity earlier in the year, and I talked about it, to get to see Mercury. And there's our second opportunity to get to see Mercury the second half of May. It will be low on the horizon with Venus, and I'm only about 10 degrees up from the horizon. And in fact, around the 21st, I think the two of them are about as close as they're going to be. So Venus will be your pointer to find Mercury because it's not quite as easy to find. But that being said, it will be the second light you'll see in the dusk sunset sky right next to Venus, so then you'll know you'll have it. It will appear before any other star does. So, little fun thing for you. All right, this is Matt Lawton. I know a lot of you are going through a lot of hard times working through things during this quarantine. It's changing us, and if anybody needs any help, the reading, predictive reading, to look at your next year, see what's up with you, I am available. Give me an email. We can talk costs. It's mattu823@gmail.com. So that's MATTHUE823@gmail.com. All right. I will see you early next week for the weekly forecast as we go into May. And that will be May 4th when the nodes change. So that's next week. I won't talk about that as much next week. This will be the one you'll have to refer to for the next 18 months if you want to hear about that node switch again. All right. Signing off for now. Have a beautiful day.